focused, we camped out in the 3 chapters, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, that we call the Sermon on the Mount. This is the sermon that Jesus preached that Matthew records likely in its entirety there. And as we studied it, we spent a week long studying it, and I still feel like we barely scratched the surface of what Jesus is teaching us in that text, and we're doing what we can to make it palatable and understandable to our teens and to the kids that were there at camp, and still, I feel like we can go so much deeper with this text. And so this morning, I want to preach to you the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' words, and I'm doing it for 3 reasons. One, I think it's always prudent, and most years I do this. When we get back from church camp, I preach a sermon that is mainly focused on what all we covered this last week, is how I'm trying to say it. And so, one, we do that because that's good for you as parents, because now you are getting a sample of what we've been teaching your children for a week straight. I think that's helpful. 2, it just makes my life easier because I've been camping out in this text for a week straight, and I haven't even done laundry yet. And so I'm not changing gears. We're staying on the same track of mind that I've been on for my sake, and that's going to make it better for you. And number 3, I just think there's some stuff in this part of the text that doesn't really hit teenagers the way that I think it's going to work for some of you. And that's my way of saying my third reason. I just want to nerd out a little more. I want to go a little deeper this morning with this text. And so jumping in, I want to show you what I think is so important to our lives. And we're going to talk to both the believers and the unbelievers in the room. So if you're here this morning and you are spiritually seeking, or you're curious, or you're trying to figure out what all this is about, but you're not sure if you're a Christian, there are some very, very challenging words in this text that Jesus says to the people that are far from God. And at the same time, the whole rest of it is really, really challenging to all the rest of us who think that we actually do have it, and the ones that we think we are on the path that Jesus wants us on. Jesus says it like this, beginning in verse 13, Matthew chapter 7. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. Before we go on, the culture tells you, what the world tells you, because this is easy, because this is broad and wide, easy thinking. It doesn't challenge you. It doesn't push you. In fact, it accepts you exactly as you are and asks nothing from you. And so because of that, most people land here because it's the easiest teaching in the world to accept, and it's this. And tell me if you've heard this, that faith and religion is kind of like different roads on a mountain, and all the different roads are leading up, but we're all on the same mountain, and we're all trying to get to the same place. And so you have your path, and I have my path, but all the roads really are driving towards the same place, and are all leading towards the same thing. And so they have their religion, and they have their religion, and we have our religion, and all of them are good, and all of them are valuable. And we can talk about that, and there's some aspects of truth to that, but Jesus just says it doesn't quite work like that. And you know it doesn't quite work like that. Like, you know that not all paths lead to the same place, and you know you can make bad decisions that send you down a bad path, and you end up in a place that you never meant to go, and you end up going further than you ever meant to go, and doing things that you never meant to do. We intuitively know that not all paths go to the same place, but so often the culture is telling us, hey, look, it's intolerant, it's judgmental, it's unkind of you to try to proselytize me and tell me that it's right for me to believe exactly as you believe. Let me do me and you do you, and we can both have our own version of truth, and after all, we all want the same thing. And Jesus looks at that and he says, it's just not true. It's not true that there's all these different paths leading to the same place. What's way more true is that most people are on a path that does not go where they think it goes. Most people are on a path that leads to destruction. Wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. And you ask, well, if it's so bad for me, why do so many people take this path? If it really does lead to destruction, why are so many people on this road? And Jesus' answer is right here, because it's the broad and easy road. It's just easy. It's the path of least resistance. It's the road that most people are going. And so if you don't do anything in your life to figure out what you believe, to wrestle with the deeper truths of life, to understand who you want to become, if you don't do any work to kind of figure out what does it mean to have a lasting life with an eternal reward, where I leave behind a life of legacy, I leave behind something better than how it was when I was here. If you want to know how to live that life, it takes work, and it's hard, and it's difficult, and you must spiritually wrestle with a whole lot of things. But if you don't want to do any of that, then by all means, let the culture form you. Let the world form you, and continue to be swept up in whatever cultural movement, whatever thing is pop culture cool at the moment, and allow the world to decide for you where you're going to go. And Jesus says you can live that way. It just leads to destruction. You absolutely can do that, and the love of God enables you to have your own free will to do that, but Jesus' warning is it doesn't end the way you think it does. So why do so many people do it? Because he says right after this, in verse 14, small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And you go, well, what is the way? What is the narrow path? You remember what Jesus says in John's gospel. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And if you're searching and if you're not a believer, then this will sound challenging, and it'll sound judgy, and it will sound intolerant. And Jesus isn't saying it to shame you. He's not saying it to hurt you. He's saying it to get your attention, because you know this is true about most things. You know that it takes focus and intention and work to end up making something or becoming something or going somewhere that you actually intended to begin with. Grab a crayon, close your eyes, and start drawing, and you will have something, but it won't be the picture you want. Focus and stay in the lines, at least for me, because I'm not a good artist. Focus and stay in the lines and, draw the colors that it tells you to. I don't know. And you might have something, right? I'll give you a better illustration. I like to backpack. I like to hike. And this idea of narrow here in the text. And so narrow or straight, right? Straight paths. The idea of like cramped, confining, hard, difficult terrain is the idea that Jesus is referencing here. And so when he talks about this narrow road and this straight path, I've been on some hiking trails where all of a sudden the path gets narrow, and you're looking down off the side of a cliff, and to the right of you is a mountain, and you're sitting here having to be very careful with every step that you take. That's what narrow paths look like, right? Narrow paths require focus and intentionality. It requires you to slow down and be accountable for every single step that you take. There's a hiking trail that I used to hike a bunch when I lived up in Oklahoma. It's the Ouachita Mountain Trail. And you're hiking across kind of the tops of the Ouachita Mountains, which sounds way cooler than it actually is. It's nice. It's not great. It's nice, and it's a hard trail for the amount of work it is. For as pretty as it is, it's just such a tough trail. And there's about a half a mile stretch of that path, where to the left of you is you're just looking out into the mountains. You're just looking down off the edges of these cliffs. And to the right of you are hills and brush, and you can't go that way. And you're on this narrow path that is nothing but rocks that are about this size. The whole path is just made up of all of these rocks. One of my buddies affectionately calls this place Ankle Break Pass. It's the kind of trail that if you try to admire the beauty, if you try to look out at the grandeur around you, you might die. You will at least break something or twist an ankle or sprain an ankle or hurt yourself very badly. And so for this half a mile stretch, you're in this beautiful scenic area, and you're not seeing any of it because every step you take is carefully calculated to make sure you actually stay on the path that you're trying to be on. Jesus is going, it's difficult. It's difficult to follow a path that leads to life. It is not easy. It takes focus. It takes vision. It takes clarity. It takes being very intentional about what you do in order to actually have a path that leads to lasting life. If you want to live on purpose, if you want to live for purpose, you must be so dedicated to carefully staying on the path that Jesus is calling you towards. And so Jesus just wholeheartedly disbelieves the idea that there's so many different paths and they all lead to the same place. He goes, yeah, there's a lot of different paths and most of them go to the same place, and that place is destruction. And destruction is not the place you want to go. If you want to go to a place that leads to life, you must tread carefully. And then he starts telling us what it looks like and what to watch out for. And that's what we're going to talk about. He says, first of all, watch out for false prophets. I won't spend a lot of time on this because I would need the whole Sermon on the Mount, the whole 3 chapters to walk you through this. In each chapter, he points out the tendency to display certain righteous acts when inwardly you were ravenously craving carnality. That is Jesus' viewpoint of people. He looks at people and he goes, you can perform well, but until your heart is transformed, you will on the outside be dressed in sheep's clothing and inwardly be ravenous wolves. And so all through the Sermon on the Mount, he says, you've heard that it was said, don't murder. I say, don't even be angry in your heart. It's not about behavior modification. It's about heart transformation. You get into chapter 7, he goes, don't give. Sometimes you can even have the right action, but the wrong heart. And so look at the people that when they fast, they want to anoint their head so that everybody notices. Jesus says, don't do it that way. Wash your face. When they give, they want to show it on TikTok, or as Jesus says it, they want to blow a horn in the street so that everybody notices. He says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. When they pray, they want to use lots of words and sound eloquent and stand on the street corners. He says, don't do that. Go to your prayer closet and pray in secret, because it's not about your outward performance. It's about what's going on in here. And so here he says, beware of false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. Your translation might say they are ravenous inside. He goes on. He says you're going to know them by their fruit. And I'm going to say this very quickly. We've got to skip through just because this will take up all of our time if we stay in it. But he goes on. He says a good tree doesn't bear bad fruit. A bad tree doesn't bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by the fruit that it bears. And so if you do not produce good fruit, you will be collected and thrown into the fire and burned. And he goes on. He says, he ends this by going, you will know them by their fruits. The outward performance is a sign and a testing of a transformed heart. We can move on. That's my teaching in that. We'll do a whole sermon on it. Again, we've done plenty of sermons on it before. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. And then he continues on. He says, now, this is where we're going to camp out. He says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many of you will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not do many miracles? Did we not cast out demons in your name? In the next verse. And he will say in the next verse, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Or as we see it here in the NIV, I never knew you, away from me, you evil doers. And so here's what we just learned. Can we back up a couple verses and we'll walk through it? I think what you want, whether you're seeking Jesus or not, if you're interested in faith at all, and I want you to know that even if you're not religious, and even if you're just curious, and even if you're sitting here today and you're going, well, like, I'm not really a person of faith, and so you say that there's a right path and a wrong path, but I say that Jesus is dead wrong, and I'm not really a religious person, and I don't really buy in to any of that, and I would argue that, yes, you do. This is not my argument. This is an old argument. I think the first guy that really popularized it was a guy named Blaise Pascal. You can Google Pascal's wager, and you will see this example kind of brought out. And so Pascal would point out that, of course, you have faith. And, of course, like unbeliever or not, Christian or not, religious or not, atheist or not, you have faith. And you step into the world by making claims of faith. And if you're married, you know that. Because you cannot scientifically prove love under a microscope. You can't do it, right? You can analyze. You can examine the evidence. you can decide what is mature and what is good and right, but at some point you take a leap of faith and you say, I'm going to anchor my life to this person. At some point, I'm betting my life, I'm betting my future, I'm betting my career on something. There's some set of beliefs and there's some foundational principles that you're using to help you orient yourself in the world. And so whether you're an atheist or not, you are a religious person and you are a person of faith. And so in that way, Jesus is telling you, he goes, look, the moment you go, how dare you, Jesus? There's not just two paths. How dare you say that? That's so intolerant. The moment you say that, what you're saying is, the way I see the world is superior to the way that you see the world. I think you're wrong and I think I'm right, and it's intolerant of you to say that way, so you should believe what I think. Any other view is intolerant, and then you've just done the very thing that you are claiming not to do, right? You are now the one being intolerant of certain viewpoints, and so we are proving to ourselves, of course you're a person of faith, and of course you are stepping out in career and in relationship and in life. You are gambling your life and your future on what you believe to be true about the world. And so with that, Jesus comes and he says, in your faith, you can be somebody that cares about sound doctrine. Because what does Paul say? He tells Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4, the end of 1 Timothy chapter 4, he says, guard your doctrine closely. Maybe your translation says, pay attention to sound doctrine. And in doing so, you will save not only yourself, but your hearers. And so as Christians, we say, does sound doctrine matter? Of course it does. Does having a real and right set of beliefs, does that matter to your life? Of course it does. There is such a thing as sound doctrine, and you can and should want that. Number two, you would say, well, doesn't the Bible say that it's not just about the doctrine and the religion and the obedience? He says things like, some of you worship me with your lips, but your heart is far from me, right? You perform the right religious acts, you say the right religious words, but your heart is not in it. And so some of us know it's not just the doctrine that matters, that the experience matters. There is an emotional appeal to the Christian faith. Your heart has to be in this in order for you to be a Christian. You cannot have dead, weak, obedient religion that does not engage the heart. And so, of course, your heart must be there. And then you might say also, but if none of that produces action, what's the point? If none of that isn't just redemptive to you, if it's not redemptive to the world, then your religion is weak and selfish and probably false, right? And I think that would be a true thing to say. And so we would say it's not good enough for you to believe the right things. The beliefs that you have should transform yourself and transform the world. That when the church comes together and informs the culture, that the culture of God spreads, the kingdom of God is built. And so we have not just redemption for ourselves, we have social redemption. Maybe in your political views, some people would call this social justice, right? And so this is the idea that we can heal the land and we can heal the world, and when we live right, the rest of the world is encouraged to live better and eventually live right as well. And so we all want faith in some form or another. We all want faith that is doctrinally sound. We believe the right things. It is emotionally engaging. It pricks your heart, it challenges your heart, it transforms you from in here, and it's also socially redemptive. In other words, it's not all talk, we actually live out the action. We actually live in love and live in service and live in sacrifice to other people. And what Jesus shows us in this text is you can have all of those things and not belong to God. This is the most important thing I'm going to say this morning, and so I want you to hear this. That is to say that you cannot be a Christian and not believe in doctrine, in an engaged heart, and in social redemption. I think you have to believe in all of those things to be a Christian. But you can believe in all of those things and practice all of those things and still not actually be a Christian. Let me make my case. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. This word Lord, Kerusos, I believe that's right. It's not, it's really close to that in the Greek. It's this word of Lord. It kind of means master, but it's much more than that. This is the word that they translate over in the Old Testament. In into what we call the Greek Septuagint. That's just the Greek translation of the Old Testament. The word that they translate over from God is this word. And so this word, it means Lord, so it means like master. It means like the one that you submit to, but it has a divine connotation. It's a word for God. This is an admission of God. This is, you are God, and you are holy, and you are my Lord. This is an admission of sitting under the truth and principles of God. So to even be able to utter Lord, we're assuming some kind of understanding of what we would call like orthodox doctrine or orthodox Christianity, that you can be this kind of person and have absolutely a correct and well-fitting view of who God is and what you believe about God. To be able to call him Lord in this word, with this Greek word, to even be able to use this word is to admit that he is God and that you are not, which means you can have the right beliefs about God and not belong to Jesus. Not also does he say that, he says, Lord, Lord. And I've missed this so many times in my reading of this, I don't think I understood it. I heard another teacher point this out. And I think it's true because I see it all over the text, that they pointed out the fact that anytime you see a name doubled like this, it's always with emotional intensity. It's always a moment of sensitivity and empathy and emotion built into this text. And so you see it in the Old Testament when King David grieves his son. When David is grieving Absalom, you see it in the text, Absalom. Or when Jesus hears the plea of Mary when he's visiting Mary in Martha's house, or rather Martha, and Martha's complaining about her sister Mary, and out of pity and out of love for her with emotional sensitivity, Jesus looks at her and he says, Martha, Martha. And we've studied that before. We preached it earlier this year. And then here you see it again, Lord, Lord. Anytime you see the names doubled, it implies this is not a hardened heart. This is a sensitive heart. This is emotional investment in this language. And so to even be able to utter, Lord, Lord, there's some kind of heart conviction that is here. This is somebody that has experienced God at an emotional level at some point. And then he goes on. Not everybody who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. And he says, only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Because many will say on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles. And so the last thing we do is we go, but I'm one of the real ones. I did all the right stuff. Not only did I believe the right thing, not only was my heart really engaged in it, but I served and I performed and I did the things, and I really did seek to redeem the world, and I really did seek to have a socially redemptive gospel that I lived out, so much so that it wasn't about me, it was about the works, and I performed, I did miracles, I cast out demons, and I told people about, and Jesus says, you can do all of that stuff. You can believe the right things, you can feel the right things, you can do the right things and still not belong to God. It's the difference between using God and serving God. It's a difference between a God that serves you and you being a servant to God. Because what we can do is we can go, God, I want sound doctrine. I want my heart to be engaged in my church community. I want to see the world transformed by the work of my hands. I just don't want you. And we do that as Christians. We can be these religious people that go, I want all the things that you offer. I just don't want a relationship with you. Because the moment I give myself to you, I'm not in control. And it's not my will, and it's not my way, and it's not about me anymore. And I have to surrender myself to my Lord, and I have to make you the God of my life. And so I'll take all the pieces of you that I like, and I'll believe in you. And I'll do the right things, and I'll even pray to you. I'll feel it. I'll feel so convicted, and I'll do all of that. But when I face the parts of you that I'm not okay with, when I face the parts of you that threatens my autonomy and tells me I can't do what I want and I can't live how I want, then I don't accept that part. So I'll take all the parts of you. I just don't actually want you. I want the benefits of knowing you without the relationship of knowing you. And so this is why he says, in the next verse, this is why he says, I never knew you. That's the problem. Depart from me. I never knew you. I never knew you. Not you did some right stuff, but then you messed up again. Well, there you go again. You just started sinning again. You were a good Christian for the most of your life, and you got right to the end of your life, started doing wicked things, and so boom, you just ruined it. It's not that. It was never that. Your faith is not based on your ability to perform religious acts to impress God so that he will let you in to heaven on the performance of your works. It was never that. He's asking for you. He's seeking you. And there's so many of us that go, God, I want all the benefits that you have to offer. I just don't actually want a relationship with you because that would be too costly. And God looks at us and he says, you believed the right things, you felt the right things, you did the right things, but you never gave yourself to me. I never knew you. Not that I knew you and then did. I never knew you. I never knew you. You were never mine. You just weren't, and you know you weren't. You just never gave yourself to me like that. You were always willing to have a version of me, a twisted and malign version of me bent towards your interests, but you were never mine. You've never surrendered your will to me. And then he drives it home with this. If that doesn't drive it home, that's it right there. But he closes out like this. This is how Jesus finishes his sermon, which means it's probably appropriate I should finish mine this way, but we'll see. Therefore, this is me thinking out loud. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. I can't help but think of James. Where is it? James chapter 4. That feels like a guess. The book of James, he says, be doers of the word and not merely hearers, lest you deceive yourself. And this is what I want you to know about false teachers, is I don't think most false teachers are malicious. I think most false teachers are deceived. And they're not deceived by others, that we deceive ourselves. We lie to ourselves. The easiest form of deception is self-deception. This is what James is saying when he says, don't just be a hearer of the word only, but be a doer as well, because as long as you're a hearer and not a doer, you are, my translation says deluded, or you are, deluded. Your translation might say you deceive yourself. Either way, you live in a delusion. Your view of reality is not right. This is the danger, by the way, you young folks. No, it's not. I'm about to be 38. I'm starting to say you young folks instead of us young folks, and that's weird to me. But notice, so young people, young Christians especially, this is the problem with young Christians, I believe, is the younger, to be a young Christian means that if you are young, then you have been taught a whole lot of things, but you haven't done a lot of things, right? That's just the nature of being young, right? You have a lot of opinions, a lot of views of the world, but without all the life experience that comes with age, you haven't actually tested those theories and tested those experiences. And so the reason why it's so easy to be deceived, the reason why it's easy to believe the wrong thing, and as the Bible says, to be tossed to and fro by every wind and wave of doctrine, by every cool thing that comes your way, by every new trend and every new style and every new belief, and every new thing that tries to capture your heart. The reason why it's so easy to deceive yourself as a Christian is because many of us, we've heard more things than we've actually done. We've been taught a lot of things. We haven't actually lived a lot of things. We haven't actually practiced a lot of things. And James' solution to that is don't just be a hearer. You've got to do it. You've got to show yourself. It's easy to think yourself one thing, and then the moment you're in it, and the moment you're doing it, and the moment you're testing it, you learn real quick whether or not you have a capacity for that or not. I used to think that I didn't believe I had a weak stomach because things like blood and things like that have never really bothered me. I don't have a weak stomach, and then one day I went to make sausage at Johan's house. Turns out there's a reason why they say, they found out how the sausage is made, right? There's a reason that term exists because I gagged the whole time and I tried so hard to be strong. And they're like, here, why don't you step out? Look, we'll do this for you. I'm like, no, I can do it. I can do it. Like the whole time, right? I won't do that anymore. But like the whole time, like that was me. You don't know who you are until you actually do it, right? You can believe something about yourself, but until you start practicing it, it might be that you're deceiving yourself. And so James says, look, you can't just be a hearer. You have to be a doer. Otherwise, you are deluded. Otherwise, you deceive yourself. And so this is Jesus saying, everyone who hears these words and puts them into practice. You got to hear, you got to do. You got to hear it and live it out in your life. And if you do, he says, he's like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rains came down, the floods rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. Your translation might say slammed against the house, and yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. Look at that. It had its foundation on the rock. But he who hears these words of mine, in the next verse. Oh, there it is already. He who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against the house, and it fell. And great was the fall. And then I imagine Jesus drops his proverbial mic and walks away, because that's the end of the sermon. That's it. And after that, it just says the crowds were amazed at the teachings of Jesus because he taught them not as the scribes and Pharisees, but as one having authority. And I hope as we read this together, you too are amazed by the teachings of Jesus, because here's what he just showed you. Having good doctrine, believing the right things, and having the right heart posture towards God, that you really are having an emotional experience when you're worshiping with your church community, when you're serving others, when you're pouring yourself into the lives of other people. You really are allowing your heart to be moved by that, and then putting it into action and seeing the life change around you where there is social redemption. You can have all of that, and he still says, depart from me. Why? What's missing? That you can do all of that and still be trying to do it on your own strength. Still be trying to build your house on the integrity of you, on the strength of the foundation that you can lay. I don't know construction, so I think I'm on here. He said that's what it's like. It's like you can build a house on sand, and now it's up to you to build a foundation, to build something that's going to stand, to build something that is strong and secure. And so you're trying to use the right building materials. You're trying to have it to stand up straight and look right and all of that. Or you can have the exact same house, but you build it on the rock. You build it on what really matters. You know that it's not you. You know that you can't save yourself. You know that as long as you perform the right things and feel the right things and do the right things, but reject God who taught us the right things, but do not surrender to the will and the grace of God, you can do all of that and it works for a while, but when the storms come, you fall. If you don't have a foundation on him, not on your strength, but on his strength, not on your power, but on his power, and way more important than any of that, not on your grace, but on his grace, because that's what it is. It's the man in John chapter 14 where he says, it's the Pharisee that's in there. He says, thank God I'm not like one of these tax collectors. And the tax collector's over there praying, and he hits his knees. And he bangs his chest, and he says, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. That's what it is. You want to live right. It's not my words. Those are his words. You want a life that leads to right living. You want a lasting life. You want a good life that has eternal rewards and leaves a legacy behind. Surrender yourself to the grace of Jesus. Allow him to do the saving work. Do it on his strength and his power and not on your own. You have to surrender your will. I heard one teacher say, and I think it's true, he says you can have your will or you can have your hope, but you can't have both. If you want hope, if you want real hope, if you want lasting hope, surrender your will to the love of Jesus Christ and build your house on his grace, on his sacrifice, on his saving word. Build your house, build your life on the foundation of the ultimate sacrifice already being paid for you, so that it's not your performance and it's not your beliefs and it's not your heart that you're hoping God will have mercy on, but he looks at you and he goes, I already paid the price. I've already lifted you up. I've already given you the firm foundation for which you to build your life off of. And so do not be the one that thinks the right things and does the right things and feels the right things, but does it all for you. that does it all for your glory and your selfishness and does it all on your strength and your performance. Surrender yourself to the will of God so that when that day comes, he says, well done, good and faithful servant, rather than depart from me because I never knew you. And I'll tell you what my sermon was at camp when I preached. And I tried to show the teens that the entire Sermon on the Mount is impossible to live out. None of us have done it. In fact, he says, you must be perfect. He says, as your heavenly Father is perfect. He says, your righteousness must surpass the scribes and the Pharisees. And the point that I brought out to them that I want to give to you is that the Sermon on the Mount is not to be what you use to build your life off of. It's the wall you crash into. It's the realization that I can't do that on my own. And when I try to live that way by myself, I crash and burn. But when I surrender to him, when I give him my life, when I allow him to take control, then I'm able to make sure that my house is built on something that lasts. Not my strength, not my will, not my power, but Jesus, the sacrifice of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, the heart and mercy and grace of Jesus so that I can live out a life that looks like Jesus. Build your house on the solid rock of the grace of Jesus Christ. Surrender yourself fully toward your God and receive from him an everlasting hope and a lasting life that matters. Let's stand. I'm going to pray. Let's sing. God, we come to you thankful for you and humbled by you. And we just pray that you will help us this morning, that you will call us to be these people, that you will, by the empowering of your Spirit, you will embolden us to live out a life that honors you and is not self-serving and self-seeking, but places you as God, surrenders to you as Lord, and receives your grace for a penalty that we cannot pay ourselves. God, we thank you for Jesus on the cross. We thank you for that good news message that we can be his and we can have hope and we can have life. And so, God, I just pray that you will call us to you, that you will hold us in your arms, that you will lead us, as your psalmist says, that you will lead us to paths of righteousness. God, keep us in your presence. Keep us on your path by your will and your strength and not our own. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.